Hello and welcome to Kettle and Bones, where we make really delicious, really healthy food. And you can too. Alrighty, today's the day. This is it. You ready? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm referring back to that moment in our recent Moist and Tender Chicken Breast episode when I said this. This is perfect next to all kinds of salads, roasted vegetables, mashed cauliflower, fresh and crunchy coleslaw, or, I don't know, maybe some freshly made ultra-low-carb, high-protein almond and lupin flour-based fettuccini, just hypothetically. Oh, and by chance, if you're wondering how you can get some of that low-carb fettuccine in your life, well, that's what's known in the videographical gastrotainment industry as a sneak peek. So that's exactly what we're up to today, at long last. So, you ready? We've cracked the code on keto-friendly pasta, and today we're putting together a beautiful plate of noodles both inside and out, just in time for a warm summer lunch on the veranda. We're making Fettuccine Primavera. Let's get cooking. Can you feel it? The air is just crackling with fettuccine energy. This is gonna be good. First things first, pasta dough. Just like when we made noodles for our meaty lasagna in Series 2, Episode 10, our dough starts with equal parts almond flour and lupin flour. This mix will give us a pasta texture that is smoother and less grainy than straight almond flour would give us, while avoiding the overly bitter flavor that straight lupin flour would have. It's the best of both worlds. Next, just as before, we're basically creating our own designer pasta flour, replacing the carbohydrate-rich, starchy part with the very low-carb ground almond and lupin. But to get that flexible, mildly chewy pasta texture, we need gluten. Tipo 00 wheat flour, a common choice for fresh pasta, contains between 12 and 13% gluten, so that's what we're going for. I'm eyeballing this because that's how I roll, but if you want to be really exact, the most precise way is to weigh this. For every 100 grams of almond and lupin flour blend, you need 12 to 13 grams of vital wheat gluten. Too much gluten and your pasta will feel tough and possibly rubbery. Too little and your noodles will be fragile and they won't hold together as they should when they're rolled very thin. Next, to our dry ingredient mixture, I'm adding about half a teaspoon of xanthan gum. This helps our dough's flexibility and elasticity, crucial to a good pasta noodle texture. And now just a wee sprinkle of salt. And right here on the countertop, I'm using a fork and a bench scraper to blend all our dry ingredients together. If you're concerned about mess, you could of course do this in a large bowl or on a baking sheet. With the dry ingredients blended, we'll turn this into pasta dough using the same method as probably every other pasta recipe video you've ever seen, by making a well in the middle of our pile and cracking 3 whole eggs into the center. Now we're simply beating the eggs in the center, which pulls in the dry ingredients a little bit at a time. This will go from a puddle of raw liquid eggs to a fairly wet, sticky, almost paste-like dough. When that happens, let's ditch the fork and get our hands in there. And as we do, we'll need to periodically add more of our proprietary alternative flour mixture. I have a bowl of almond and lupin flour with about 12% vital wheat gluten, same proportions as before, but without any xanthan gum in it. We've already added plenty of xanthan gum to the original dry mixture. As we start kneading the dough, this is very wet, soft, and sticky. It pulls apart really easily. But as we go, stretching and developing the gluten with both the warmth from our hands and the motion of the plop, pull, and fold technique of kneading we're using, this will get firmer and springier. I'm continuing to dust the dough with our designer flour mixture until its surface is slightly tacky, but no longer leaves any residue on my hands as I work with it. This usually takes about 7 to 10 minutes, depending on how aggressively I'm kneading on any given day. I'm forming this into a spherical dough blob that, when poked, springs back a bit. That's what tells us that the gluten is good and springy, and the noodles we'll get from this will be flexible and slightly chewy like pasta should be. We're now going to cover this tightly with plastic wrap and set it to the side to rest for about 45 minutes to an hour. Save that bowl of dusting flour for later as well. We'll be using it again. I'll be shaping my dough into noodles using a pasta machine. If you don't have one, you can certainly use a rolling pin, but it is probably going to take you a bit longer if you do. If you like pasta and you would like to have it more often, I'd really recommend a manual pasta maker or perhaps a pasta making attachment for your stand mixer if you own one. That will save you a lot of time down the road. This whole dough ball will give us enough pasta for 4 to 6 people, depending on how hefty the servings are. I'm going to make half of this into noodles right now, and the other half can go into the fridge for up to a week or so I can have fresh pasta on demand whenever I roll it out and process it into noodles. Just like this. First, this needs a little poof of dusting flour, and I'm going to press this flat enough that I can send it through the pasta machine's rollers on the widest setting. For my machine, that is number 0. This dough will feel very similar to conventional wheat pasta dough, but it's actually a little bit slipperier. Almond flour contains almond oil, something that wouldn't be present in wheat flour. So you may find that you have to press and gently stretch this a little thinner to get it to pass through the rollers. It's not stuck in there, it's actually just that the rollers are slipping against the dough a little bit. Pressing it a little thinner as you roll will help, as does sprinkling on a little dusting flour to give the rollers some extra purchase. After one trip through the machine, I admit this isn't much to look at yet, so I'm dusting this again and we're going to laminate it. We did this before for our lasagna noodles as well. Laminating the dough involves folding it back on itself in thirds, or however much it takes for it to fit back through the machine, and once again, I'm sending this through on the widest setting. We're going to laminate a total of 3 times, after which, alright, this is starting to look a little bit more like a sheet of pasta. Now we're going to gradually roll this thinner and thinner, moving from setting 0 to setting 1, setting 2, and so on. Now I've reached setting 5 here, and I'm actually going to cut this sheet in half and do these separately, simply to make it easier for me to work with. I don't really have the counter space to work with a 15-foot long sheet of pasta dough. For fettuccine noodles, the desired final thickness will be number 7 on my pasta maker. Your sheet should be thin and translucent enough that you can make out your hand through the dough. When all of your dough has been rolled through at the desired level of thinness, cut them into fettuccine length sections. If you're just making this using a rolling pin, at this point, you would just carefully cut the sections into long fettuccine noodles. However you're making them, we need a place to put our noodles where they won't stick to each other once they're shaped, so I'm using a pasta tree. This is a simple, collapsible rack that provides a safe and comfortable resting place for every noodle. For those of us using a mechanical aid to cut our noodles, now's the time. Run your noodle-length sheets through the fettuccine-sized noodle slicer, and hey presto, fettuccine. My pasta tree came with this handy noodle retrieval rod, but if you're winging it, a chopstick or a wooden spoon handle, anything without a sharp edge, can help you get your noodles to their destination. And that's the process we're continuing until we've converted this rather drab and unimpressive looking tree into a veritable weeping willow of low-carb noodly goodness. Just be sure to separate these a bit so they don't stick to each other. One other thing to note, if you were a little heavy on the vital wheat gluten at the very beginning, or you really worked the dough a lot during the kneading process, it might come out extra springy, and your sheets of fettuccine noodles might come out of the cutter still slightly clinging to each other a bit. If this happens, just peel them apart gently and hang them up. They're still totally fine for fettuccine. I'm going to so carefully set the pasta tree aside. Whew, made it. If, like me, you have some dough residue stuck to your countertop, a wet paper towel and a quick pass with the bench scraper usually does the trick. Alright, with the fettuccine piece handled, let's turn our attention toward the primavera aspect of this dish. Primavera means spring, and that means light, clean, fresh-tasting veggies. On a burner over medium-high heat, we're starting with some avocado oil. And when that gets up to temperature, I'm tossing in some grape tomato halves, and I'm just going to let these blister on the outside, probably no more than 2 minutes or so. This is also a great opportunity to toast a few twists of coarsely ground black pepper, and you know I never pass on one of those. In just the last 30 seconds or so, I'm adding a few cloves worth of sliced garlic, just right at the end, because on high heat, these will otherwise burn pretty quickly. Okay, that was easy. For the rest of our veggies, we're going to be on medium heat, and that means we can use olive oil without having to worry about burning it for a nice, light, mildly fruity flavor. We're starting with some fairly small slices of onion. I've chosen to use a shallot today for its mild, mellow qualities, but red or white or yellow onion would be fine too. The difference between these is fairly subtle when they're sautéed. As soon as the onion has had a few minutes to soften, we'll be adding in a variety of fresh veggies. Today I have cremini mushrooms, red and yellow bell peppers, zucchini, summer squash, florets of broccoli, and peas. Look closely and you'll notice that I've sliced these to about the same thickness for each piece, maybe half a centimeter or thereabouts. This helps us cook these to the desired degree of doneness without overcooking anything. But even with these sliced more or less the same thickness, we still have some ingredients that need more cook time than others. The broccoli, for example, that's going in first for just about a 1-minute head start. Next into the pan is our zucchini and summer squash to get it nicely al dente, but hopefully not mushy. As you go, add additional splashes of olive oil as needed. Some of our olive oil is inherently going to be soaked up and absorbed by some of these veggies as they cook. After about 1 more minute, the bell peppers, mushrooms, and peas can join in the fun. And after yet another 1 minute, we can set these aside. Covered, while we finish preparing the title ingredient, the fettuccine, into a pot of water that is as salty as the sea, and brought up to a rollicking boil, we're carefully adding our lovingly crafted fettuccine noodles. Since this is fresh pasta, it won't take long at all to cook, so ideally, I want this all to hit the water at the same time. I'm going to try something here. Careful. Whoop. Easy. Careful. And there we go. This will cook like any other fresh pasta you've ever made, really quickly. I'm tasting a piece for doneness after just 60 seconds in the water. Almost there, needs maybe just 30 seconds more. Whatever you do, don't overcook it. Err on the side of underdoneness. Remember, there's always some heat carryover that will continue to cook these after they come out of the water, and we can always finish them off in the pan with our veggies if they come out underdone. Not much we can do though if they're overcooked and mushy. There it is. Yeah, once these mix in with the warm veggies, they're going to be perfect. That was literally about 90 seconds total. It does not take long. Our beautiful fettuccine goes in with our vegetables, and I'm going to lubricate this with a little more olive oil to make sure nothing gets sticky or clumpy. And we're on low heat now, by the way. This is all done cooking, I just don't want it to get cold. In goes a generous handful of basil leaves, lightly crushed and torn to release their natural flavors. Also a good cup and a half of finely grated Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. And about a tablespoon or 14 grams of cold, unsalted butter cut into quarters. Stir this gently until the butter and the cheese melt and combine, and let's plate this up. This mélange of noodles and veggies requires no fancy presentation. I just like to twist a portion of pasta into sort of a nest and make sure every plate gets a nice variety of the supporting vegetables. Our vibrant red pan-roasted tomatoes and garlic deserve a place of honor atop the pile. And like many of our dishes with Italian flavors, we finish this with a drizzle of olive oil and broad, thinly shaved flakes of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. I'm using a vegetable peeler to make these. A brighter, saltier cheese would also be excellent here too, maybe a Pecorino Romano or Asiago. And a little sprinkle of chopped Italian parsley is always good for making the dish look complete. And last but not least, a squeeze of fresh lemon helps to brighten the flavors up really nicely. Optional, but highly recommended. Go ahead and salt and pepper to taste if yours needs it, and this is done. Pasta Primavera may have its humble roots at New York's famed Le Cirque restaurant, when a panicked chef at the end of his rope with nothing to lose desperately tossed whatever vegetables were in the fridge at the time with simply seasoned noodles and olive oil to satisfy a frenzied horde of diners driven mad with hunger on the brink of storming the kitchen, or so the legends that I just made up tell us, but it has since come to occupy a special place in our hearts. After preparing, assembling, and ultimately devouring this iconic dish today, it's not hard to see why. Stay with Kettle and Bones for many, many more incredible low-carb and keto-friendly versions of the classic foods you've been craving. I can tell you right now, we are going to be working with this keto pasta again for sure. I mean, spaghetti, linguine, ravioli. I've got so many ideas. But for now, just enjoy your Fettuccine Primavera.